Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Past Meets Profit podcast. Let's get right into it today. We're gonna be looking at the Black Death with our first guest, Pat. Why don't you tell them about yourself?
What's going on, guys? I'm excited to do this podcast. My good buddy Will over here. I'm a freshman at Catholic University. I'm an accounting major, and I'm on the lacrosse team.
Good stuff.
Bit of a history buff myself.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so first things first, we're gonna talk about the Black Death, which happened between 1347 and 1351. It was one of the deadliest pandemics, or more accurately, catastrophes in human history, killing roughly one third, one half of the European population. It spread primarily through rats, on merchant ships, and trade routes, reaching Asia into Europe from Italian ports in 1347. This disease was a death sentence. It's what you got now. Often not just for individuals, but for entire villages and cities, some of which were completely wiped off the face of the earth. Mass graves were dug, families abandoned, both homes and each other. Just for the hope of survival, the plague wasn't defeated but endured. The end of its spread was not due to an adaptation or because a cure was found, but rather it killed so many that it could no longer affect enough to survive. So now we're going to look into this more through a business perspective. With so many workers dead, labor became scarce, and surviving peasants could afford to demand higher wages, more money. Uh, this really did was disrupt the feudal system, as lords struggled to find labor, and serfs often left manors in search of better pay elsewhere, because again they could afford to. Now there was pushback against this. The governments, such as England and their Statute of Laborers in 1351, tried to freeze wages at pre-plague levels, but there was no way to really enforce this. Ultimately, it failed. For those who are unaware, the feudal system was a social and economic structure that dominated medieval Europe and mainly just was viewed upon land ownership. You had kings and nobles at the top, and then as you got lower down, into peasants and serfs. Now, Pat, you want to connect this first a little bit to coronavirus, a more modern day issue.
Yeah, so I mean, when you're talking about something like the Black Plague, when you're referring to 30 to 50% of the European population passing away, you don't necessarily want to be able to connect it to something that we've experienced in our lifetimes, but to a certain extent, there's a lot of correlations and relations in that sense. I think land is a huge one where uh, even during coronavirus, the value of some land decreased because it's not necessarily like there's a shortage of people who are there to work agriculture. Um, People are afraid to be around each other because they're scared of obtaining this virus. So that kind of deters them from maintaining this agriculture and this land. And in the same way, it'll affect the markets. The markets will be in a constant state of flux because there's no determined outcome. There's no vaccine yet. Like, in that process, there's too much going on to properly say what's going to happen. Um, and similar to COVID-19, the government resistance, the English Statute of Laborers in 1351, it's a similar thing we had going on during COVID-19 with people, um, and the checks they were getting because some people weren't able to work for 2 to 3 years. Some people were getting laid off their jobs just because of how many people they could have working. So there's a bunch of pushback and things that happen.
Great insight. Great insight.
Thank you.
All right, now moving more into some of these business and disruptions that Pat mentioned. There was a bunch of just skilled workers, your merchants, your artisans who died, and what this did was led to a huge loss of these trade networks. Because again, you don't have these people to actually produce items of value to be traded with. Namely guilds struggled to maintain quality of control, because now there's a lot less experienced workers that had to fill in for these deaths. Now guilds were simply an association of merchants and craftsmen that can almost be thought of as powerful unions where they would work together. And what they did was regulate prices. They would organize ranks, and you'll hear this a lot now with apprentices, journeymen, and masters. And they would also set the standards of production. Now, another thing that happened to these more well-off families that did survive was that they would inherit a lot of wealth and property. As again, there's a lot of family members dying that unfortunately they would come into this wealth. Now, what this did was give a rise to a new middle class with more disposable income, aka more money to spend. So, there was a lot of shifts within industries themselves. With rural industry, we went from labor-intensive farming to pastoralism, because raising sheep for wool or cows for beef requires fewer workers than tending to a wheat farm, for example. Now, urban centers and trade hubs were hit most devastatingly. At first, they were crumbled, but however, as they recovered, they almost benefited from the lack of pressure of that such a high population, and ultimately were able to increase demand for luxury goods, because again, there's more money in each, since there's less people, there's more money in each person's pocket. Long-term effects, as we see with that rise of the middle class, more social mobility, and then we talked about the decline of feudalism, all which laid the groundwork to the Renaissance. So, we've just talked about a lot of changes that happened to the Black Plague, and how there's a lot of how destructive it was. Now I want to talk to you about an example of a success story within the plague, and that would be the success story of Florence. Now, Florence's economy wasn't solely based on agriculture. It was very big in banking, textiles, and international trade. What this did, it diversified the economy and allowed it to have very strong resilience. So by having banking, when international trade fell to the plague, banking could step up. And textiles already having a pastoral-based production center, it helps with that. Furthermore, the surviving wealthy families of Florence were able to consolidate the wealth and help really push Florence, because there's less infighting and more just looking for survival and looking for flourishment. Now, the second way Florence was able to succeed was due to adaptation. As we saw, there was a plethora of nations, including England, who were very stagnant and refused to raise wages, and ultimately just pushed back against what was happening due to the plague. Florence, on the other hand, they raised wages, improved working conditions, and to attract skilled labor. And this helped give them the labor necessary and good labor necessary to recover and again flourish. Now, though heavily affected by the plague, Florence not only survived, but emerged wealthier and more influential, using adaptable banking and trade economy to consolidate power in the aftermath of Europe's greatest demographic disaster. Now, Pat, we just talked about real success story. Do you think there's any nations or any businesses maybe that were able to succeed through what was happening with COVID, or maybe the aftermath of COVID?
I think like we see here, these urban cities and urban towns, in a sense, we see like a consumption shift. The standard of living goes up through this because of the increased per capita of wealth and the increased wages that people are receiving because of the lack of workers to do their jobs. So I think with COVID, it's a similar thing. Um, I do think the agriculture aspect was a little bit different in COVID. I think um, in that sense, some of those people thrived a little bit because they didn't necessarily have to follow the same guidelines. It's a little bit different than the Black Plague. You're out in the open, and your resources to other people are more valuable. So I think that's kind of where it differs a little bit. But I will say the consumption aspect is the same. So during COVID, a lot of people in these urban areas and urban cities, it's the same. It's the same consumption shift that the demand goes up and people's expectations for quality of resources and quantity of resources for that matter goes up, and they have higher expectations for just about everything, since the production has to be better because people's wages are increasing because there's less people to do those things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of comparison. Yeah. Now, uh, we've really compared to COVID a lot. What do you think would be the biggest things that a viewer here could take away to help them and what they do? Whether it be what you've seen through the stories of the Black Death that we talked about, coronavirus, or even through the success story of how we could apply how Florence succeeded into everyday life almost.
Yeah. History tends to repeat itself a lot, so I think with seeing and recognizing patterns, I think that's a way that people can help themselves, or get on the better side of the market and the economy, knowing that okay, so we're in the middle of a tragedy. There's the market's going to take a hit. This whatever field of work we're in or we know is going to take a hit from past experiences, or history itself. I think knowing that and being on the opposite side of that is what can help. And whenever you're in an urban area, things are always going to be better off. So when you're in a city, you're surrounded by people, and in this case, it's not necessarily the best thing for purposes of the plague and COVID-19, but um, people need people to survive. So I think that's kind of where we learned those traits from, and how history repeats itself. So
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's really important to understand histories. Yeah, that's what we're doing right here. Understand
Exactly.
histories. What
exactly.
happens. And I'm kind of, my own insight, I would say, be versatile. Something that really helped out Florence was the fact that they weren't so reliant on one industry. So in the same way, as a person, don't be so reliant on perhaps one base of knowledge. Be open to expand what you know, and also be adaptable. That's something we also saw when we were looking at transition from that industrial revolution episode, more focused on our last episode, is that be adaptable, see what's coming, and you see that through again looking at history, and move with it. Don't push against the unstoppable force. Uh, Almost you want to tame it. Good. So
Diversified portfolio never hurts, as we see past meets profit and how you can use your past to profit. That's what we talk about here.
I like that one. I love that one.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Will. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good one. All right. Bye bye. Stop, please. Please stop. Thank you.
Good work. Oh, there we go.